Hi, and welcome to this mini lecture on the topic of management science. I'm just going to focus specifically on the impact of big data because this module is already loaded out with lots of interesting resources, further links, etc. So I think it should all already be fairly clearly explained. But let's just look in a little bit more detail at big data and some key themes that come up. So what are we talking about when we talk about big data? Well, in 1985, as you can see from this diagram, the information revolution had begun to sweep through the economy. It became much cheaper to obtain, process, and transmit information. And as a result, it became much easier to do so and changed the way that organizations did their business. So organizations began to utilize integrated management information systems. So what we now understand as kind of information systems, as data on computers, as anything that you can analyze, as customer data and so forth, providing information from activities across the organization. So you can really see how the amount of information storage capacity rapidly increases over the years, and 2002 is widely labeled as the beginning of the digital age. Big data is used in a very wide range of different settings, and it's always growing with more and more data available to provide inputs on MS models, for example, so management science, on the number of clicks on a web page, reviews on TripAdvisor, all of these different places where we do things online provide a way of creating a data set and a way of then providing data that can be analysed and used to a company's advantage. So lots of different ways to use that big data. If you can imagine reviews on TripAdvisor, who might they be interesting to? It's not just TripAdvisor, it's to all those hotels, anyone in the travel industry, it's to people interested in customer service to see what counts as good and what counts as bad. Even patterns around who uses it, what country they're in, who travels, the age groups of people who tend to leave reviews, are there patterns on who's happy and unhappy, and so forth. So multiple benefits can be gained from just one data set. So for example, a supermarket swipes an item to give the customer a receipt, they get data that they want, but also to maintain inventory levels and to match demand and to look at patterns across the country, to record financial transactions, etc. So one data item, one datum as it's called, then has a range of different applications. And as we build those into data sets and ever bigger data sets, we come into the field of big data with its radical uses for transforming how we understand customers, businesses, stakeholders, finances, and so forth. And there are a range of different ways that we can talk about data characteristics. So we can think about how volume of data and velocity of data and variety of data have all grown significantly over the past decades. We can move data around way quicker than we used to be able to. We're pretty much at real-time data velocity. We can see things as they happen. Data volume has grown, so we can gather ever bigger data sets and house them in huge data warehouses, for example. And data variety has also grown, where we used to just have a simple table. Now we've got things like social posts, videos, mobile data, audio, photo, etc. It's also important not to forget data veracity, particularly in today's world. How confident are we that the data is correct? We want to think about making sure that our data sets are full of accurate, properly recorded data that is really telling us what we think it's telling us. Another element to just consider, a term that you might have come across that will become of increasing importance to managers, is the idea of the Internet of Things. So it's that connection between the devices that we're surrounded by and a Wi-Fi connection or some form of digital data connection and the internet. So, you know, the most basic ones are perhaps now that we just take for granted: smart televisions, smart telephones, and so forth, smart curtains, the kinds of things we find in our house, smart transport, smart watches, you know, our digital app watches. So that I've got Garmin, other brands are available, smart energy, this link between using the data that's there and gathering data sets to change the way that we use things, to be able to control things and so forth. So as managers, there's lots of opportunities there. When managers come to use big data, they need to be very clear about which data is valuable to them and how it can be used. If you gather too much information about things that aren't relevant, it can be hard to identify what the key elements are for you and your business, and hard to boil down what it is you should be paying attention to. Big data has certainly extended the range through a range of innovative data sources that only ever will grow. So we know through the kinds of apps that we have now, even just as consumers, things like Uber, there will be all kinds of data sets constantly being created, innovative data sources that we'll be interested in. Another really big trend at the moment is around gathering data on employee engagement and using employee engagement surveys on an ongoing basis, so companies have a real-time measure of how employees are feeling that week, rather than doing a once-a-year survey. So increasing innovative ways of gathering data and finding data that we are using to try and shape the way that we live in the world and how we run our companies. Some example uses of big data then, so real-time data can improve forecasts. So for example, when a package will be delivered, and making this data available to customers can improve the service and their perception of the service. So when you get a message from Amazon saying your parcel's 10 minutes away, that feels like very good customer service. Internal monitoring and improvement of key processes was a traditional role of management science, but with now access to much more reliable and plentiful data, it actually extends the role of management science. So for example, Tesco's use of tracking wearables in the warehouse means you can really improve how people use the warehouse, how you load the warehouse, and so forth. And something like customer data can aid organizations in understanding their needs and preferences from website interactions and electronic point of sale data in stores. So really getting to underneath the surface of what is important to customers and how they use your company, your product, your brands, your services. So I hope you found this initial introduction to the idea of big data useful. You can find heaps more online on this topic, and hopefully you will be able to share some of your thoughts and ideas in the discussion forums on this topic. Thanks for listening.